April is a tricky month, Bloom. It's the month of lies, although the month of lies might have started before April. But now I believe the New England Patriots control this draft because number one will be Caleb Williams. Number two will be Jaden Daniels. That's my opinion. And then number three, New England's saying all sorts of things. So does the draft, in fact, begin? Not with Chicago,
Right.
not even with Washington, but with those tricky Jerod Mayo led Patriots.
If we're to believe the betting markets, the Jaden Daniels talk, which has been pretty consistent, I don't think there's been any time, if we were tracking the chatter, I don't think there's been any time that another quarterback was favored, not just in term of betting odds, but just if you're taking your scales out and weighing the talk. The talk has been Jaden Daniels to Washington pretty much from the beginning. And as we get closer, and interesting as the NFL tries to communicate to us through certain voices, or people just want to set us straight, which is fine too. The tenor for the last week or so from many big voices, some trusted voices, has been hey, teams don't have their minds made up yet. Teams don't know right now, teams don't actually know how their board's going to be stacked or know their preferences in some of these tough calls. So I guess we have to also leave open the possibility, because what did Washington do, Cease? They had all three quarterbacks in. Really? All three? I mean, okay, double checking and
Right.
things like that. But at this stage in the game, if you haven't figured out a way to separate these three guys yet, McCarthy and maybe the others, it makes you wonder. But it's okay. I'm sure Adam Peters knows what he's doing, and that sounds like it's going to be Jane Daniels. And you're right. And number three, I think you have choices. And again, in the background here is that Jerod Mayo has job security, so he doesn't have to force a choice one way or the other. You can trade down, and I would guess the price is 11.23 and next year's first for Minnesota to go up and get Drake Maye.
Yes.
And notice, see, since we talked last week, that Minnesota moving up to take May, I think I put it at 35-40%, or at least a favorite of who Drake May is going to be the third pick. The question is who's going to take Drake May. And that's the other side of things for New England, is whether you look at Drake May and you say he's the kind of prospect in many drafts, he could have been the number one overall pick. He's got enough of the traits, enough of the tape, enough of the pedigree that a team probably would take him number one overall. You can get him at number three overall. New England, do you really want to take the chance that you're not going to be picking high enough to get a quarterback like Drake May? Do you start off the Jerod Mayo regime with that? So I think that's the choice they have. And then everyone waits after that, because Arizona certainly would like to trade down. They would certainly like to extract a pretty big price for that pick from somebody that wants JJ McCarthy. There's even some talk about more movement. I think maybe some teams will want to get in front of Chicago at number 9 to get the third of the big three receivers, which might not be Roma Dunze. Actually, I think we saw our first mock. It might have been Peter Schrager's mock. I could be wrong about this. That had Odunze ahead of Malik Neighbors. So plenty of intrigue, but the key is held by the Patriots.
Yeah, we'll get to those wide receivers in just a little bit, but let's talk about Jerod Mayo and what he has. He has a year of grace.
Mm-hmm.
I know Robert Kraft said at the owners' meetings, like, we have to get the franchise quarterback, but we're not going to force it. Okay,
Right.
you're at three. You don't, I mean, he's kind of right there if you wanted it. But with Mayo, is it best, Bloom, to do perhaps what Sean Payton did, was come in for a year, get the lay of land, don't change a bunch yet, and then change a bunch after that? Should Mayo just kind of see what's there, or, Patriots disciple, all these sorts of things? Like, he's there. It's not necessarily the same thing as Sean Payton, who was new to town and had to see what was there. Well, Mayo, he might already know what he wants and what he doesn't want.
I would think, and also let's bring up the name Alex Van Pelt. What does he want as the offensive coordinator, as the first legit offensive coordinator? I mean, in some ways, how did the Patriots end up here? It's because once they didn't have Tom Brady, the bottom fell out. I mean, they were still, to give Bill Belichick credit. And now I think the overriding talk is, hey, everyone's being too harsh on Bill Belichick. Uh, we would have tons and tons of respect for Bill Belichick. However, the offense was not getting the attention it deserved, and Belichick's deficiencies as a CEO emperor type, when he hired Joe Judge and Matt Patricia to run the offense and did it in such a way to save them some money, uh, that was the decline right there. And you bring in Bill O'Brien, it doesn't matter. Also, who's responsible for the Mac Jones pick? And for a little bit, it looked like the Mac Jones pick was going to be okay. But we look at Alex Van Pelt's background. You got the connection to the Browns. In some ways, you would say it's pretty similar to what a team like Minnesota would be looking for in a quarterback. You have to think he's going to be creating structure, but throwing to who, right? I mean, that's the other thing. If you bring in a rookie quarterback this year and he's throwing to Pop Douglas and what Kendrick Bourne, okay, you're setting him up for failure, right? Ramondre Stevenson's a decent running back, but you're setting him up for failure. Do they get in and make the Brandon Ayuk trade? Do they trade down and start to, as Matt Williamson put it for Caleb Williams in Chicago, start to build a nest for that quarterback that they'll take 2 or 3 years from now? I think that's something to factor in. But it's very difficult to gauge this because, see, for the first time, we're faced with trying to read the mind of a Patriots team without getting into the head of Belichick.
Yeah, what's great though is the Patriots are talking.
Hmm.
They didn't do that with Belichick. I've told the story before, but I would spend plenty of time around Patriot scouts. They don't say anything to me. The only time they did was when I was around Jeff Legwold because Jeff Legwold is the man, right? So it's like cool by association. But I would say good morning to those blankety blankers. They wouldn't say anything. Sorry, Jeff.
We don't need to acknowledge that you exist. Yeah, and I think that
But now that they're talking, are they saying the truth? Because that's the
sure,
thing. I've
that's the
heard
game.
3 different things, 2 of them in April that I don't believe. We will take Drake Maye. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
We really like JJ McCarthy. I don't believe that. I go back to what I was told in January.
Well, I think some of this is successfully muddying the water, and uh, it's difficult, right? Because on one hand, what happens whenever the league knows a player is available for trade? They know that a player has to get traded, right?
Yes,
The
right.
price goes down, 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 down. So, but at the same time, you don't want to keep anybody out of the conversation that might get in the conversation because they think the pick is not available. Real interesting stuff from Adam Schefter, one of your mentors, was on the show with Adam Levitan, the established the Run show. It was real interesting. Somebody actually, I think one of their subscribers or viewers or listeners put out there the question for Schefter: how do teams know that a player is available? You know, how do teams know? I guess that a pick's available. That they just have like some hotline they pick up and say, "Hey, everybody, if you want Brandon Ayuk, he's available now." And Schefter very interestingly said, well, teams have people they employ that look at the salary cap situation for teams, that look at contracts, that are doing the same thing we're doing, just processing all this information, and they can do the math. They can say, yeah, it looks like, hey, I don't know if the 49ers are going to want to pay Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins. They might be available. You don't necessarily have to have the agent put it out there or have to have it put out there through a mouthpiece. And I think if you look at the Patriots at the beginning of this era, where yes, it's a succession plan where you're handing off to Jerod Mayo in the Patriots way, but really it's a whole new ball game. And I can't remember who exactly it was, Cease, but they asked Jerod Mayo, how is it different? I'm not Jerod Mayo. They asked someone, how is it different? One of the Patriots players, I think, with Jerod Mayo. And you know what he said?
Mm.
Something like, well, we have someone who is a former player who understands what we've been through, right? And a few other things that basically were talking about Bill Belichick without talking about Bill Belichick,
Ah, right.
right?
Mhm.
So how much does that trickle down to how things are run? There's talk, I think, about how there's been talk about how much the coaches had say, and in a way, it skewed the draft process. The coaches had say over the scouts, or if the scouts came up with one outcome and the coaches said, "No, I think this player that this scout has lower is better for the specific role in our offense or defense," the coaches would win out. And again, how much did Tom Brady like spray perfume on all this? And really, it wasn't that sound of a process by the end. It looked that way. Again, I think it makes it hard to prognosticate. There's a Instagram account, Bold Take Scouting. Haven't got a chance to consume that much of it, but they compile all the rumors, right, Cease? And
Okay.
and you read down the rumors, and it's like the rumors are like, and they show the citations of who's saying it. The rumors are the Patriots are going to take Drake Maye at number 3. The Patriots are going to trade down. Minnesota's going to trade up to number 3, right? The Giants are interested in JJ McCarthy. The Giants are fine at staying at 6 and getting a wide receiver. So you see, if you take all the rumors that are out there, you have contradictions, and as little as when you started.
Yes, confusion and information. That's what it's a battle for in NFL circles. It's the Audible, Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom talking about this NFL draft, and I'm not shocked. Bloom, I don't want to be a snob.
Mhm.
I have snobbish tendencies, and I apologize for those in advance. But when people are like shocked Marvin Harrison may not be the first receiver off the board, I'm not. Again, going back to January, it's like that's when I first heard it, I was like, oh crap. I mean, I don't think so, but I'll listen. So I've listened to plenty of people talk about MHJ, fine talent, um, but not the largest, not the fastest. Definitely has soft hands, has late hands, routes, all those sorts of things. Like for me, MHJ was a difficult eval because it was almost like when Calvin Johnson came out, although not the size of Megatron.
Right.
But it was just one of those. I remember I was on Fox Sports with Oren Lamena, and he asked me like, "What's wrong with Calvin Johnson?" I was like, "Nothing." So it's a difficult eval with MHJ, but Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, and at Neighbors Pro Day and LSU, and everyone's going nuts. It's like, yeah, I mean, scouts have already done that, but as I've said on whatever, I've been on so much Bloom, I apologize, but like the boards are set in January. We're talking about this stuff like it's new,
Right.
but the boards have been set in January. And would I be surprised if there's a team that has Roma Dunze number one or a team that has Malik Neighbors number one? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
No. And before I dig into that topic real quick, because I wanted to look it up, it was Hunter Henry, actually, which is,
Mm,
Hunter Henry. It said about Jerod Mayo's energy. He kind of lights up a room. And again, I don't want to be mean, but I feel like you're saying Bill Belichick at that point in his career wasn't lighting up the room.
right.
He's been in our seats literally where we are, and Mayo's listening. This was the best one. Maybe listening to us, is good. I mean, he's been exactly where we are. Just maybe listening. How's that not directed at Bill Belichick? Just maybe listening to us, is good. And yeah, I'm listening to some of the voices that say teams are still making up their mind. But see, so I tend to agree with you that the scout job is done in January. Let's educate some people right now, Cease. At what point in the process, at what point in the calendar do scouts start looking to the 2025 draft?
April 29th.
Right. Right. I mean, they already are.
Mhm.
Their job is done. In January, their job is done. They've
It's
done
almost as if the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl are just kind of like celebrations of like,
exhibition.
hey, the
Yeah.
season's over.
Yeah, it's an exhibition. It's a reward. It's a reward for the players, and it's also an NFL doing a handshake and things like that. But the scouts, like, and this is where you get to the process. Okay, so you pay the scouts to do their job, right? You pay the scouts to do the job where they're always on the road. They know everybody. They try to get people to tell them things that no one's supposed to say, and they're out there and they're grinding. They're doing the grind, and then they take their work product to the teams. And at that point, I think absolutely it's possible or true that some teams are indecisive right up until, well, maybe when they're on the clock, when you have these schisms of coaches versus scouts or an owner versus a coach and maybe even a quarterback getting into the fray there. But when it comes to sorting out these top 3 receivers, bringing it back to, I think, the most fun topic in this draft, because usually, see, in a typical draft, we don't get one wide receiver prospect as good as any of these 3. Most drafts,
Right.
any of these 3 guys, and they are the 3 best prospects in this draft, I would say. I mean, just this is what you're looking for. So I think when you go Harrison versus Neighbors versus Adunze, um, Harrison seems like a cinch to be the number one just because he's been there for so long. But as we've talked about, when a player's there for so long at the top of the heap, you nitpick, you overthink. And with Harrison, it's been, well, he's not a burner. He's not truly a burner. He doesn't have like a take the top off the defense gear, and he's not a wizard after the catch like Malik Neighbors is. Even Rome Odunze. And look, it's not to say that Harrison's a slouch after the catch.
Right.
I mean, he's a strong runner. He's a balanced runner. He gets yards. He just doesn't break tackles or juke guys out of their shoes. But you could see how, and see these three prospects are all so advanced and so good that you can see how, depending on your quarterback, because it was Peter Schrager's mock, and Peter Schrager's mock, the Giants move up from 6-4, and Paul Perticchese, who I absolutely love. We always have him on for the first hour of the draft. We'll have him on again this year, live with Matt Waldman and Jason Wood and many, many others. Poor guy. He had to be there for the Daniel Jones pick, right? And in the Peter Schrager mock, he has the Giants giving up a second round pick to move up to 4 for JJ McCarthy. And poor Paul this morning, he's like, that would be the worst. That's the absolute worst. Like, you want to pick, like, what would be the worst outcome? Even McCarthy at 6 isn't as bad as moving up and giving up a second round pick to take McCarthy. And then it would be obviously Harrison, number 5 to the Chargers. And then number 6, Arizona, Schrager had Odunze, not Neighbors. And I could see that. I could see that with Kyler Murray.
Odunze's the most Larry Fitzgerald like.
Exactly. Well, and there's the franchise memories, but also Kyler Murray. Here's what Kyler Murray is not necessarily going to maximize. Like, when I look at Malik Neighbors, I think run after catch. I want someone who hits those slants, hits
On
everything,
time, on
bing,
rhythm.
bing, 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 right? Because a Neighbors scares defensive back so much they give him a big cushion. So you just need quick set your feet, and there's hyper accuracy. I think Tom Brady had it. Matt Ryan at Boston College. Name one guy Matt Ryan was thrown to at Boston College, right? And he was
That one tight end who got mad when I called
right.
him the
Never
Matt
nervous
Ryan security
Purvis.
blanket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ryan Purvis, right? And Andre Callender, the wide receiver.
Okay.
But I
Mhm.
remember, and again, I want to just as a go back down memory lane thing. If folks go back and look at Matt Ryan and his stats and the kind of quarterback he was, it was miraculous that he went in the top 5, and it was the right pick. I mean, he took
Mhm.
the
For
Falcons.
sure.
I mean, at the end, we remember Matt Ryan, like, it was time to put him out to pasture, but he should have won a Super Bowl with that team. And it was hyper accuracy, because there's one thing, and Matt Waldman talks about this a lot, that a completion isn't necessarily accuracy. So
Mm.
completion percent as an accuracy stat. So Kyler Murray, not hyper accurate, not a quarterback that's super timing and rhythm based. Kyler Murray is a see it, throw it guy. Kyler Murray is I'm going to give my guy a chance to make a play. Now we're talking. That's Rome Odunze more than Malik Neighbors. So I think, to go back to your original point, uh, teams wouldn't be wrong to have their board stacked between these three receivers differently. Daniel Jeremiah has been saying it. Many of them saying it, but they've been saying it in terms of Malik Neighbors ahead of Harrison. But what about Odunze ahead of Neighbors? And this is the fun part of the draft. And this is also the three players that, unquestionably, if your team takes one of these three guys, you got the pick right.
It's not a Rorschach test, but what's the one ink blot? I think a
Mhm.
Mallrats where the dude's sitting there staring and the little kid's like, "Oh, it's a schooner."
Uh-huh.
It's like, that's a sailboat. He's like, "A schooner is a sailboat, dummy." But it's like, you stare at the thing, you're gonna see different things depending on which team you are and where your fit is at. Yes, even if that's JJ McCarthy to the Giants, which is an interesting fit, to be sure. So, like, teams have to make those decisions and they have to see what they see in these prospects, and guys can improve and guys can grow. And when you mention Murray to a Dunze Bloom, I think of dependent.
Mhm.
Like, wide receiver is a dependent position, depends on the quarterback getting on the ball.
Right.
But a quarterback is a dependent position, depending on what kind of receiver he's got that can
Right.
either bail him out of a bad play or use his precision. I call it pass placement
Mhm.
to highlight his throws.
Yeah, and I think the offensive coordinator plays a role here. The scheme, what routes do you ask? Again, is it a timing based offense? Are you establishing the run and going deep off of play action? That sounds more like Malik Neighbors, and so on. I think that's part of what makes it fun. Where things get skewed is that teams can look in the mirror and it's a funhouse mirror, and what they think they are is not actually what they are. Maybe it's what they want to be. It's they're chasing something. And I think that's where we separate out the good organizations and the bad organizations, or the organizations that need to improve. And unfortunately, the Giants are one that we're really looking at right now. Are you really going forward in this Dable and Shane era? And they have, much like New England, they have a lot of different choices. They could even trade down, and we shall wait and see what happens. It will certainly be exciting, and there will be at least one thing that is truly unpredictable.
Yeah, one thing that makes us go, "Well, I didn't see that
Whoa.
coming." Right. Maybe one thing none of us have heard through those little chimings that are going on right now. You want to be the best and up to date on the NFL draft, the rookie scouting portfolio. Okay. I put it out there on Twitter. Like, if you want to be the best and most knowledgeable about the draft in this golden era, well, you're going to follow along with Emory Hunt, get his draft guide. You're going to get Dane Brugler's Beast. You're going to get the Matt Waldman rookie scouting portfolio. You're going to subscribe to Mike Tanier Substack. Like, you're going to consume what Doug Farrar is putting out there. Like, there's so much. Lance
Mhm.
Zierlein, NFL.com.
Oh yeah.
Hell. And I guess I
That's
could
almost your
name
starting
because
point. That I mean,
exactly.
that's where you start, and then you start ornamenting that tree with all this other
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Right. And Lance Zierlein took over at NFL.com for Nolan Naraki, who I don't have a high opinion of. Like, just NFL.com
Yeah.
became an incredible draft resource because of Lance, who is fantastic. So Daniel Jeremiah, like, watch his podcast, Move the Sticks, like all this stuff, man. And of course, we've got our free Football Guys draft guide.
Mhm.
It's right there for you. You thinking about your fantasy team? Of course you are. We all are, Bloom, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, rookie drafts are coming up, and you need to know which of these rookies you want to take in your redraft league, and how high are you going to take Jonathan Brooks when the Cowboys take him at number 56? Probably not high enough.
I think it's Trey Benson. We'll see. We shall see. That's what it is about the NFL draft. He is Sigmund Bloom. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey. Help us out on YouTube. Grow on our channel. Please help us out by like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. We appreciate you. He's Sig. I'm Cease. We are the Audible. Everyone, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty?